Other things we need to have as far as the components of the BCP, the key decision-making people, which might include a telephone list or a calling tree. You know, a calling tree, those are the old days where we declared a disaster. I called, you know, if I was the commander of this company, right, the CEO, I'd call the top couple of VPs in my company. They would then look at their list. They know who they have to call, and they would call, and eventually everybody would get called. Of course, you know, today we don't have calling trees. We have text messages. And I remember before then we had beepers that if things went bad, you got hit with a page. So, but in some form or another, we have you know, those decision-making people, and they should have a list of who to contact and how to contact them. Backup of the required supplies. You should have provisions already there, the necessary supplies to continue normal business. Like I said, if you have what we call a cold site, which means the equipment's not there, you got to find a way to get that equipment there. Make sure that it's at least wired for power. You know, if it's a hot site, which are more expensive, you've got duplicate equipment over there that's ready to go. You just have to get the backups over there if they're not already stored at that offsite facility. Part of your plan might include kind of the transference of risk. Remember, the transference is the use of insurance companies or third parties. So you need to know what that insurance information is. You know, what's covered as far as your equipment and facilities, the ability to reconstruct media, any extra expenses as a result of having to move operations, expenses for business interruptions. In fact, one I remember reading this in one of the stories of a national paper years when Hurricane Katrina came and wiped out the Louisiana, Mississippi area. It was my understanding that of the 13 casinos that I visited back down in Biloxi, that they were all kind of blown out to sea. I shouldn't laugh. I don't think anybody was hurt there, hopefully not. But what I was told was that they had insurance for business interruption, so the insurance company was not only paying the casino its operating expenses that they could then use to pay the employees while they rebuilt the facility. I mean, you know, I don't know how much that type of insurance costs, but, you know, again, you want to know, is that a part of the plan? You know, do I have the funds? And it's not uncommon for a company to have insurance that they can continue to pay their employees during the process of rebuilding. Valuables, papers, records, right? We have to have insurance for some of those things. Errors and omissions insurance. Now, I have to deal with this myself as a consultant. You know, it is possible, and I'm sure it's hard for any of you that are watching this to believe, but I might make a mistake. I might do something wrong that causes an outage for a company that I'm working with. And you know what? If it's really severe, and if it was a just blatantly bad mistake on my part, they can sue me for their lost business and revenue. And that's where I get errors and omissions insurance for, is to cover me for those types of mistakes. It's almost like having malpractice insurance if I was a doctor. Fidelity coverage as well. Media transportation, media, again, right, getting the software and data over to the new locations. All of these are things that might fall under the insurance information. You want to know, really, in your plan, what is covered. Now, one of the fun parts of the business continuity plan is testing. And if it's at all possible, you should do a full-scale test at least every year on the operational portions of the organization. This is something that's rarely done. Now, if you are going to do a test, it's something you do or schedule at a time that it will have minimal disruptions to normal operations. Your test should try to accomplish how precise BCP is, to evaluate your personnel's involvement in the plan, that they understand what their responsibilities are. If you have third-party vendors, you're evaluating their capabilities to follow the plan. It helps you test the vital records retrieval capability and to be able to measure the overall performance. I have seen corporations do a full-scale test where they literally will just, you know, figuratively pull the plug on their network at their data center, cause the entire thing to go dark, and then look to see if the backup data centers took over, if traffic rerouted, if it all worked as according to plan. Some companies and corporations do mock disasters, right? They say, okay, we're doing a fire drill, we're doing an earthquake drill, you know, and you know, we can then you know, pretend that areas got destroyed, and you know, put little signs up that says, you know, pretend this area is dead, and make sure people know what they're doing. I said area, not people dead, right? Area is gone, it's inaccessible. There we go. Because we want to know, does the plan we come up with work? If I said these are the steps of your responsibility and you follow those steps and you find out those steps were not sufficient, not well thought out, or something's missing, here's your chance to update that plan and make sure it's going to work. Now, there are other types of test phases besides that full interruption test, and these are things that you should complete. One's a pre-test, which is a set of actions that are pre-staging for the actual test, right? Everybody knows about it. It's not a surprise test. You then want to test the real action of the business continuity test. In other words, say, all right, imagine this has gone, show me if these steps work for you to do data recovery, to do media transportation, to do whatever it is. After you do these tests, and that's the real test, right, that you do, whether it's a full-blown test or a parallel test or something like that. You then have the post-test activities, which number one is clean up whatever the group did, whatever their activities were, and recap the evaluation and the limitations of the test. Right? We're basically saying, what worked well, what didn't work well, what could we change. Some of the other testing options are what we call a paper test. Sometimes call it a checklist, right? I walk around, I'm like, check, that's in place. Backup tapes, check, that's there. And I'm just doing kind of a walkthrough. Preparedness test might be more of that walkthrough part of it, making sure everybody's ready and up to speed. And then the full operational test, like I said, which should be done. Some companies, by the way, are mandated to do it at least once a year as a part of the regulatory requirements they have. But those companies that aren't, like I said, it's rare that they ever do them. But it should, if you can, a full operational test. Now the goal is to take the results of the test and measure it against the success of the plan and make sure that you align these things together so that you know it's working. The metrics that you would gather from the test are things like how long it took to complete each task, how much work had to be performed at the backup site, how many records were successfully carried to the backup site, what is the accuracy of the data entry that at the recovery site as compared, if you're testing it, right, you're actually trying to do it, and how is that different? What can we do to improve those things? As with all of the plans, there are going to be times when you need to review the BCP, and it is likely that any of the following factors might impact your BCP requirements and require you to update the plan. That's, of course, the addition of new business processes, especially if they're very critical, addition of new departments, or maybe even changes in personnel. You might have had one person who knew what they were doing in the test very well. They've moved on to another company. Their replacement now needs to have that same training, that same experience of the testing to know what they're supposed to do. You might have new resources. Either you've developed them or acquired them. A merger of businesses is going to cause a change in the plan. You may have a new part of the business. You may have got a new business strategy, change in the plan. Any hardware, software changes that might affect those critical parts, right? Again, we need to evaluate them with our plan. So as a summary of the business continuity, our goal, of course, was we conducted a risk assessment that prepared us for the business impact analysis. We then tried to find any existing controls or measures we could use to cover for those components, as I talked about, backup generators and those types of things. From there, we developed a detailed disaster recovery plan, a disaster recovery plan for many different pieces of critical equipment, and put it all together as one plan. That was incorporated in the business continuity plan, and then we tested those. We maintained them, updated them, and if we needed to, went back through the cycle again.